Hello, amazing listeners of the Becoming You podcast. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about the complexities of adulthood, the ups and downs, and everything in between. I am your host, Bukola. Today's episode will be starting with a question. Do you find yourself overthinking situations? Do you find yourself overthinking conversations? Do you find yourself overthinking the decisions you've made in the past? Are you often focused on what could have been rather than what is? Then today's episode is definitely for you. All overthinkers, this episode is your episode. In today's episode, we will be talking about overthinking and how to manage it. About a month ago, my younger sister reached out to me and requested that I speak about overthinking on the podcast. And I was like, are you sure you're making this request from the right person? Because I am the queen of overthinking myself. However, I did not discard the idea. I just kept it somewhere. Then I started reading about how the mind works, trying to listen to a couple of podcasts, and voila, we're finally talking about overthinking on the podcast. Yep. I think the right time has come for us to talk about it. Not because I have it all figured out and I've been able to manage myself properly, but because I feel like the podcast is about collective growth and we can actually just try to figure things out together. So in this episode, I'll be sharing some of the findings I've made so far, some useful and interesting tips I found online, and how they've been working for me, because I've tested them myself actually. Before we get into the conversation of the day and the details of the conversation of the day, how are you? How are you doing? I hope you're having a good week and a relaxing weekend. My week was very cool, and I think I went out all through this week from Monday to Friday. I had somewhere to go to. Aside from the everyday outing, nothing major happened during this week. It has been just a very laid back week and it has been relatively good. Let me know how your week is going in the comment section, and now let's dive into the conversation of the day. Right before we dive in, let's hear what these amazing people think of the adulthood phase.
Adulthood is responsibility.
Adulthood is complicated.
Adulthood is growth.
Adulthood is maturity.
Adulthood is being independent.
Adulthood is stressful.
Adulthood has been confronting.
Adulthood is draining.
Adulthood is decision making.
Adulthood is resilient.
Adulthood is overwhelming.
Adulthood is fun and adventurous.
Remember, I'm not here to demonize this phase, but to say it as it is. Overthinking and worrying are quite synonymous. As an overthinker, you're always worrying about something. You're always worrying about something that has happened to you in the past. You're always worrying about your future plans. You always just try to make your decisions carefully. You think about everything. Try to plan your every move. You're just so cautious about the things you do. You ponder over the things that people say to you. You think about people's actions, why they did what they did, their inactions, why did they not do what they did not do. Make it make sense. Yeah, but the mind of an overthinker works 24/7. Your mind is always on the go. You always have something you're worried about. The mind of an overthinker is never quiet. There are just so many voices, so many things. You can just be sitting down there. Remember what happened when you were young, and you just think about the things you could have done differently, how you could have averted it. There's just always something going on in the mind of an overthinker. Come to think of it, who is actually in the best position to talk about overthinking than an actual overthinker? Yeah, because I am talking from a place of lived experience. I'm talking from a place of experience, talking on this episode from a place of deep understanding of what it means to be an overthinker. And trust me, I know it's not easy. I think overthinkers do not like overthinking, but we cannot just seem to help it. We can't just seem to get ourselves out of our mind, out of our thoughts. And besides worrying about everything, overthinkers make a lot of assumptions. We're always quick to make assumptions because our imaginations just work over time and it runs wild. Personally, I always create scenarios in my head, and before making a decision, I think about all the possible outcomes. I literally play out all the possible outcomes in my head. In fact, I think I should be a screenplay writer because I have a lot of drama going on in my head. I think of the best possible outcome. I think about the worst possible outcome. I play out the whole consequence in my head and I get myself prepared for it beforehand. But sometimes the fear of getting the worst possible outcome from trying something, from making a decision, actually stops me from even going for it. Overthinking affects every aspect of the life of an overthinker. From minute things like worrying about a picture, excessively studying a picture before posting it online, like you're checking every angle, checking every corner, looking for the tiny details, the little mistakes, looking for something that'll just discourage you from actually putting yourself out there, from posting that picture online, to big things like becoming obsessed about perfectly controlling every aspect of your life. It becomes really, really overwhelming sometimes. Overthinking is very overwhelming. But to just make this conversation a bit more coherent, we'll discuss overthinking from two aspects. The first one is ruminating about the past, and the second is worrying about the future. When it comes to ruminating about the past, overthinkers find it very difficult to let go of past memory, of past experience, good or bad, to be candid. They find it difficult, or we find it difficult to let go. I find myself thinking about good things that have happened to me in the past very often, reliving the memories in my head, reliving them, and when I get to relive memories, I tend to feel the emotions I felt the very first time it happened. It's always good when it's a good memory, because I'm smiling, I'm blushing, I'm happy. But when it's a bad memory, that is where the problem lies. I get really angry at myself, I get really agitated, I get really stressed out, and I just dwell on them for a very long period of time. I dwell on things for a very long period of time in my head and via conversations too, because I find myself talking about the same thing over and over and over again. For instance, I had this class presentation that I prepared diligently for, or so I thought. I had done everything in my power to just give it my best, to give it my all, but somehow, somewhere, something just didn't go right in the presentation, and I feel like I was unable to meet my personal expectation. Even though after the presentation I had colleagues walk up to me to say, "Oh, you did well, you did great," personally I didn't feel fulfilled. The fulfillment was just not there for me, and I found myself really thinking about it. I called my friends, I spoke about it, advised me to extend more grace to myself. They said all those things, but I just found it very difficult for me to move past it. I kept on thinking about what I could have done differently, what I could have said differently, how I could have gesticulated differently, how I could have managed my time more properly, and my mind was just going on and on and on about it. At some point I actually got tired of thinking about it or even talking about it, but I couldn't just stop myself. Very recently I was cooking and I remembered the incident again, and I felt that anger. I was angry at myself. I randomly just remember things I could have done differently, and that is how it is for other memories too that I've found it so difficult to let go of. When it comes to worrying about the future, an overthinker is always making strategic plans. We always try to feel like we have everything figured out. We always want to feel like we have everything under control. We're always trying to plan for the future, always trying to think about what next. I was talking to somebody recently about how for the very first time in my life, I am uncertain about what next for me. I'm a bit uncertain about what next for me. And it's very strange to me. It's something I'm not used to, because normally I always have this list of things that I want to do. An overthinker is always making strategic plans, envisioning different outcomes, imagining and creating scenarios in their head. Most times as overthinkers, we tend to experience this deep-seated fear, we're just always scared about something. We're always scared about the outcomes of our decisions. The fear of what if the plan doesn't go well? There's also the other fear of what if it actually goes well? There are just so many things happening at the same time. So there's just this constant fear that the plan would not go well, and anxiety about not knowing what to do if the plans actually turn out well and turn out fine. For an overthinker, the list of things to worry about are endless. Worrying can become very overwhelming. There are times where I've experienced emotional breakdown because I felt completely overwhelmed by my own thoughts, by my own fears. And the funny thing is, overthinking also has its own benefits. For instance, as an overthinker, you have the tendency of being very inquisitive. You're always trying to investigate things in your head. You're asking yourself constant whys. Why did it turn out this way? Why didn't it turn out this way? So there are just a lot of questions. So you can use this to discover new things about yourself, to discover new things you're capable of doing. You tend to develop this deeper understanding about things, deeper understanding about yourself, deeper understanding about life. I think I've come to a place where I know myself a lot. I have like a very deep understanding of myself. Yeah, and additionally, overthinking can fuel creativity. My mind is always working, like I said, so I always walk around with a notepad where I just jot down things. On the other hand, overthinking is extremely stressful. It burdens the mind. It tends to like weigh us down. It leads to total self-doubt. You're always doubting yourself. You're always doubting your decisions. You're constantly putting yourself under so much pressure. You're overly self-aware. You tend to just know you so much that you don't even give yourself the grace to be human, to be vulnerable, to like explore things the way they are. And overthinking can be very counterproductive because we tend to waste a lot of time thinking about things rather than doing things and getting things done. An overthinker gets distracted easily because they're always just in their own head. The mind continues to just wander around, and it becomes really difficult to stay focused, and this can lead to anxiety, and anxiety can actually lead to depression. Years ago, I had a very funny experience and I found it really weird. I came across this Michael Jackson's video for the song They Don't Really Care About Us. The video is shot in Brazil. I was watching the video. I don't really know what happened to me that particular night I came across the video, but the video became more than a video to me. After seeing the video, I went to read the lyrics of the song, and I kept on like thinking about the lyrics, thinking about Michael Jackson's life, thinking about black people, thinking about racism. See, friends, I really don't know what happened to me that particular night, but I just traveled out of where I was, and somehow I found a way of linking the experiences of these people to my life. What was supposed to just be an enjoyable musical experience escalated really quickly, and it became something I couldn't control. I felt this profound sadness, and I just kept on thinking about how vain life can be. The scandal he faced and everything. Like, I just felt so many emotions. Thankfully, I was able to talk myself out of it because I was like, this person lived life like the best way he could. He made an impact. He sang about the struggles of many people, struggles I can now relate to. I had this very deep conversation with myself. I can never forget that experience because it was really different, and it was weird because I had never been a Michael Jackson fan prior to that time. That singular experience just was different. If we were to juxtapose the pros and cons of overthinking, it becomes very evident that overthinking is very harmful to us. It's harmful to our well-being. It's harmful to our development, to our growth, to our mental health, to our emotional stability. In the light of everything we've said so far, the major question is, how can we then manage overthinking? How can we manage it? How can we control it? How can we control our mind? I went online, I searched for some things, and I've been able to practice some of them. I find them very interesting. So the first thing I found was the use of positive affirmation. Yep, I've not really been a positive affirmation person, but recently I started practicing it. I just remind myself about how awesome I am. I remind myself about how I need to focus on today, do what needs to be done today rather than thinking about tomorrow, because at the end of the day, the work I put into today will go a long way in determining my tomorrow, in determining my future. So rather than wasting time thinking, worrying, I just try to talk myself out of my worries and, just remind myself, I have my whole life in front of me. I can't spend my life worrying about things that I cannot control, things that have happened in the past that I cannot change, or things that will happen in the future that I'm not even certain of. I just try to take each day as it comes and remind myself about how important it is for me to do things gradually. Aside from positive affirmation, I'm trying to become more optimistic. So I wouldn't say I was a pessimist. However, I would say probably I was a realist. I just try to think about everything like realistically. I think about the bad and the good, and I try to just get my mind prepared for anything that will happen, most times the worst possible outcome, so that I would not be too shocked when something bad happens. These days I found myself leaning more towards the direction of thinking positively, the direction of hoping for the best rather than thinking of the worst and hoping for the best. Now I'm just thinking of the best and hoping for the best. I'm trying to just stay as positive as I can, because I'm getting to understand that positive thoughts many times yield positive results. for you to get rid of overthinking, you have to be very intentional, very focused. You have to work on controlling your mind. Our minds are not supposed to control us on what to do and how to do and what to think about. Rather than judging ourselves, let's learn to extend grace to ourselves. Intentionally try to control what comes to your mind. Also, we should actually try to find something to distract ourselves from overthinking. I have noticed that whenever I'm studying, my mind finds it very difficult to stay quiet and concentrate when I'm studying. So what I do right now is I play podcasts. I found solace in playing podcasts. I found a solution in listening to podcasts. So I tend to have podcasts playing on a very low volume. So whenever my mind wanders away from what I'm studying, wanders away from what I am doing, I just direct it towards the podcast that is playing on a very low volume, which is most times a podcast about probably something really serious. You can put something about nature, something about politics. Yeah, so I'm able to snap out easily, because I remember that, the focus is not supposed to be on the podcast. The focus is supposed to be on what I am studying, and I'm able to just direct my mind back without wasting so much time on other things or wasting so much time being distracted by other things. Instead of overthinking or ruminating about the past, worrying about the future, I think we need to learn to let bygones be bygones. Let's learn to focus on today. We also need to become more solution oriented. When I talk about being solution oriented, I'm not using the word in the way our men or the guys use it. This is to evade addressing real life problems that needs emotional attention. No shades intended though. I'm talking about being solution oriented in the full sense of the word. But rather, I'm talking about how we can try to give the right amount of emotional attention to things while we look for practical solutions. Let's learn to be kind to ourselves. Let's learn to embrace ourselves. Let's try to take things slow. Let's understand that to make mistake is human. Just try to focus on the things we can control. I think for 3 episodes now, I've been hammering on it. Let's try to focus on the things we can control. And gradually, too, this is influencing the way I've been living my life lately. And it comes with peace of mind. Rather than being self-critical, I think we need to cultivate the act of being compassionate to ourselves. Don't get too angry at yourself when you fail to meet your own personal expectations. To all my fellow overthinkers, I hope we someday get to stop doubting ourselves totally. That is all on today's episode. That is all for today's conversation. If you're a fellow overthinker like me and you've actually tried to find ways of managing it, ways that are not mentioned on the podcast, feel free to drop your comments. Let's just rub minds. Let's talk about these things. You'll be helping friends. So if you're listening to us for the first time, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thanks for sticking with the podcast. Do not forget to like, share, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, please. Drop your comments, please. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your weekend to the fullest. Monday is just around the corner. Catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Do not forget to live every moment and leave no room for regrets. Remember to follow this channel so you get notification whenever I drop a new episode. Thank you. Bye.